Thank you, Governor Cooper. USIBC's Destination India and Destination America series are focused on boosting investment into states, and we're excited by the growth of Indian investment into North Carolina and across the United States. In fact, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, through our Federation of State and Local Chambers, works every day across every sector to strengthen and support the business community and to grow economic opportunity across the United States. That economic growth is increasingly tied to overseas markets and foreign investment. No one understands this better or is a more passionate advocate for our global business agenda than our next speaker, the President and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Suzanne Clark. As we face a world of unprecedented challenges of COVID, of climate change, or inequality, it is the business community that steps forward with the tools and technology to help solve these challenges. Under Suzanne's leadership, the U.S. Chamber has become more than a convener of important conversations. It has become one of the most powerful drivers of public-private collaboration to solve global challenges. Whether it was in the launching of the Equality of Opportunity Initiative at the U.S. Chamber, to ensure that we create more opportunity for Black-owned businesses and support underinvested communities, or in addressing the global pandemic and standing up the Global Task Force on Pandemic Response during the COVID crisis in India this spring. Suzanne has engaged the tectonic challenges of our day with optimism, creativity, and pragmatism. One of her greatest qualities, aside from her great sense of humor, is that solution mindset that she brings to every problem or task. An entrepreneur at heart, having led her own business, Suzanne Clark personally understands the power of industry to be a driver of innovation, opportunity, and prosperity. And finally, if I can inject a personal note here, in the midst of the COVID crisis in India this spring, when the Chamber mobilized the massive private sector effort to support India, Suzanne made clear across the entirety of the U.S. Chamber community that there was nothing more important for the U.S. Chamber or for American business than to support India in its hour of need and fight this epic battle against the pandemic. Suzanne, it is a privilege to work for you and to have you address the U.S.-India Ideas Summit. Thank you for being such an inspiring leader and a great boss.
Thank you, Nisha. That was so kind. Solutions-oriented with a sense of humor. That might be my new tagline. And it's a real privilege to work with you, Nisha, and all the expertise that you bring to the U.S. Chamber. So thank you so much. Good morning and good evening, everyone. This is my first time joining the India Ideas Summit as President and CEO of the Chamber, and I'm just delighted to be here with all of you. While I may be a new face to some of you, I know I'm preceded by the really strong reputation of the U.S.-India Business Council. At the Chamber, we're incredibly proud of USIBC's work over the last 46 years to foster strong commercial and economic ties between our countries. Very early in my tenure, I got to experience firsthand just how strong the ties that bind the U.S. and India really are. You know, and Nisha just alluded to this a second ago, but it was a Friday night back in April when a group of American CEOs and the Business Roundtable were raising alarm bells about a new COVID surge overtaking India. These CEOs, our members, were deeply concerned about the economic and humanitarian implications, as well as the well-being of the hundreds of thousands of Indians that they employ. They wanted to help quickly and meaningfully, just as India had done for us in America's darkest phase of the pandemic last year. Knowing this would require coordination between business and government, they turned to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and USIBC. And within a matter of days, we were able to get calls together with the CEOs of Accenture and Microsoft, IBM, Pfizer, FedEx, United Airlines, Deloitte, BCG, and other large U.S. companies. We engaged with top officials from the White House, the State Department, the National Security Council, and USAID, and we raised $50 million to purchase and transport supplies. We secured 1,000 ventilators and 35,000 oxygen concentrators and began shipping them to the hardest hit areas. Many of the American business leaders who joined this effort, which became the Global Task Force on Pandemic Response, are here today at the summit. Also with us are many of the Indian business leaders who rallied to America's side in our own hour of need, marshaling resources, supplying medicines, and airlifting PPE to our front lines. This is what friends do. This is what partners do. This is what allies do. We rush to help each other, not just because our economic destinies are linked, not just because we share a bond as the world's largest democracies, but because our partnership has led to genuine care, respect, and affection between the people of our nations. And it is on that foundation that we look ahead to recovering, rebuilding, and renewing our shared strength. The pandemic has tested the global economy and our citizens and continues to test them. To come out of this strong, our nations must come out of this together. From the very beginning, we have said the pandemic will not be over anywhere until it is over everywhere. And that is why the U.S. has pledged to continue sharing resources and coordinating efforts. At the recently completed Quad meeting, our countries, along with Australia and Japan, committed to ramping up vaccine production. Worldwide, 1.5 billion doses are being produced each month, and that will reach 12 billion doses by the end of the year. In the near future, there will be enough vaccines for the entire world, and India and the United States will have helped make that happen. Let's not forget, these vaccines were developed by businesses with the support of governments, and it will be businesses that continue producing, transporting, and distributing them worldwide. Together, U.S. and Indian businesses can ensure that more doses reach the world's least developed countries, and soon. The private sector is critical to restore human and economic health, which is one reason why in America, business is the most trusted institution above all others, including government. And it's why the Chamber carries forward its mission with a sense of pride and responsibility. We exist to help businesses succeed so they can serve their communities and our world. Let me offer just 3 examples of how the Chamber is supporting American businesses and in turn strengthening the U.S.-India economic partnership. First, we are engaging robustly in domestic policy debates to protect a really fragile recovery in the U.S. and the world. Over the past 2 decades, and particularly this past year, we have been the leading voice in calling for bipartisan infrastructure investment, which will create 2 million jobs a year for the next decade and allow America to rebuild our economic engine. As negotiations continue in the U.S. House, the Chamber is working night and day to see the final passage of the current bill. We will not relent until this job is done. American businesses have invested billions in Indian infrastructure to support your rapidly expanding economy, and we know that rebuilding our own infrastructure will support further Indian investment in the United States. We welcome it. In addition to supporting pro-growth policies, the Chamber fights hard against domestic policies that threaten the U.S. economic recovery or global trade. Policies like the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which would raise taxes on job creators and turn inflation into a potentially permanent reality. We will not stand for it. We also fight against policies that impose unnecessary tariffs and create barriers to free trade, such as the steel and aluminum tariffs in the last administration. The second way the Chamber supports businesses is by leading the calls for the kind of U.S. global engagement needed to drive growth at home and around the world. In our view, trade is the best tool available to strengthen our economic recovery at home. And that's why we're urging the Biden administration to lead a robust, forward-leading trade agenda that strengthens and deepens our most valued partnerships. And where better to start than with India? Our nations must get back on offense to create an even stronger trade relationship than we currently have. Other countries are already busy renegotiating their own trade agreements, meaning those who stand still risk falling behind. We were pleased to see President Biden and Prime Minister Modi engage in a productive meeting last month. Their joint statement referenced the U.S.-India relationship as a partnership for global good. That could not be more true. Our $150 billion in two-way trade and $50 billion in annual investment supports our individual and shared prosperity and strengthens our standing as 2 of the world's leading democracies. But the economic cooperation between our countries can always be deepened. The U.S. Chamber and USIBC are urging our governments to resolve lingering trade challenges and create a new U.S.-India trade agenda aimed at achieving an ambitious goal, $500 billion in two-way trade. And we know we can get there together. Third, and finally, the Chamber is determined to expand our collaboration with India and other partners on long-term threats to global prosperity. Among the most pressing of these is climate change, a challenge that cannot be solved by any single nation, and a challenge that will only be solved with the innovation of the private sector. Climate change and energy innovation are and must remain core priorities of the U.S.-India economic partnership. Together, we can continue to develop and deploy new energy technologies, support the sharing of ideas and innovations, and conduct joint research and development through our universities and businesses. Over the past 2 days, this Ideas Summit has delved deeply into all of these topics, from climate resiliency to two-way trade to infrastructure investment, and many others. And we're looking forward to diving even deeper at the Indo-Pacific Business Forum later this month, which India is co-hosting and the Chamber has been closely involved in planning. Especially as India and the U.S. bookend the Indo-Pacific, there's a lot more we could do together to spur business opportunities in the region. As we look at India's tremendous growth in his 7 years as the leader of India, Prime Minister Modi has advanced a vision of inclusive economic growth and opportunity for the Indian people. Through pro-business policies that foster investment, boost confidence, and support innovation, he has helped lift millions of Indians out of poverty and into the middle class, transforming the global economy in the process. All of us at the Chamber are deeply grateful for the Prime Minister's able leadership throughout the pandemic, especially working with us to address unprecedented challenges and keep businesses running, jobs secure, and global supply chains moving. At the same time as our priorities converge, we must continue to work together on further opening India to new investors and partners and enhancing regulatory stability and transparency. We must join together in urging both India and the United States to get serious on their trade agendas to create a more open, free, and prosperous partnership for all. We look forward to working closely with India and all of you to foster a full economic recovery in both of our countries and in the world. At this time, I am pleased to turn this over to Arun Kumar of KPMG to introduce India's Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar. Thank you.
USIBC President Nisha Biswal, friends and supporters of the US-India Business Council. Good evening to those in India and good morning to our audience in the US. It's great to be here in the 46th annual meeting of the US-India Business Council. My compliments to my friend Nisha and the entire team at USIBC and the US Chamber for a successful India Ideas Summit 2021. I am an optimist with regard to the US-India relationship, which has been steadily growing stronger across the strategic as well as economic spectrum. This is a relationship that is firmly anchored on strong people-to-people and business-to-business ties. Today, my task is simple and special: to welcome the Honorable Dr. S. Jaishankar, Minister for External Affairs of the Government of India. Dr. Jaishankar is a distinguished diplomat, having served as Ambassador of India to the United States, China, Singapore, and the Czech Republic. He then served as Foreign Secretary. In a short foray into the private sector, before he was called back into public service, Dr. Jaishankar was President for Global Corporate Affairs at Tata Sons Private Limited. Dr. Jaishankar played an important role in bringing about the civil nuclear breakthrough between the US and India. And 7 years ago, as ambassador in Washington, he was a key architect of getting the US-India relationship back on a vibrant upward path after a period of some drift in 2013-2014. It was at that time, in early 2014, that I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Jaishankar in my role as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Global Markets and Director General of the US and Foreign Commercial Service in the Obama administration. I could see close at hand what a seasoned and skilled diplomat he was. I could see how he used his deep understanding of policy, international diplomacy, and business, and the interplay between them to craft win-win solutions to advance the bilateral relationship. I must say that working with him was a great learning experience for me. Having observed his intellect and what I might call his principled pragmatism, it was not a surprise to see him write a book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World. The India Way is indeed a tour de force, not just about India's foreign policy, but about how to think of diplomacy even more broadly. I think of it as an important primer on diplomacy, and in fact, even more broadly on management. Both these domains are about making choices amidst uncertainty and constraints. This audience would appreciate Dr. Jaishankar's perspective that economics drives diplomacy, not the other way around. Dr. Jaishankar joins us today following a successful diplomatic visit to the US when Prime Minister Modi had his first in-person meeting with President Joe Biden in the White House. It is my great pleasure to present to you now the Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar.
US IBC President Nisha Biswal, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to speak to you at the US IBC India Ideas Summit and the 46th annual meeting. I do so at a particularly significant moment in our relationship. A fortnight ago, we saw the first in-person meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Joe Biden. This was followed immediately thereafter by the first in-person Quad Summit. Together, these two events provided an opportunity to not only refresh our ties, but give them an updated relevance in a larger context. Appropriately, the outcome document after the bilateral discussions was titled as a partnership for global good. So, we are focused on a relationship that has not only steadily expanded, but is now consequential enough to be imbued with a bigger purpose. As stakeholders, let us reflect on how to take that forward. Prime Minister Modi described our ties in terms of 5 T's: tradition, technology, trade, trusteeship, and talent. The tradition, of course, is one of our democratic values and ethos. This has not only brought our people much closer, but has helped create a powerful bridge between our societies. In many ways, it is a basis for a 6th T, that of trust. The technology T is something that we all know very well. At one level, it is an expression of the creative urges of both our societies. It is equally a powerful driver of business between us. Not least, it has been the reason for deepening the connect of our two nations. And increasingly, a domain for us to work closely with the rest of the international community. The technology T, of course, derives directly from the talent T. We have both encouraged our best minds to freely address the challenges of our contemporary era. In that process, they have generated ideas, innovations, and products that have transformed the nature of our lives. And consequently, the next T, that of trade, has flourished between us. The quality of commerce between India and the United States testifies both to the progress of our respective societies and indeed to our deeper partnership. In business, as much as in strategy, we are endeavoring to overcome the hesitations of history. All of this has to be conducted keeping in mind the long-term future of our environment. Therefore, the relevance of the trusteeship T, a conviction in the well-being of our planet and in securing it for future generations. This outlook of 5 Ts permeates both our bilateral summit and that of the Quad. We have reaffirmed the principles on which our societies are organized and agreed to cooperate to nurture our way of life. When it comes to technology, the significance of trusted partners is very much in evidence. Trade discussions focused strongly on the need for reliable and resilient supply chains. With COP26 round the corner, India, as the only G20 nation in line to meet its Paris commitments, made the case for our sustainable future. And in a world where creativity and mobility have acquired a growing salience, the importance of the flow of talent was recognized, including through fellowships. What is noteworthy about our conversations is that they have gone well beyond general arguments and are now expressed as specific initiatives or programs. Consider some of the recent developments. The most pressing challenge, that of COVID, has been met through a Quad initiative which taps into the strengths of each of the participants. The climate action concern is addressed, amongst others, through the US-India Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership. The relevance of advanced technologies is captured by Quad initiatives ranging from AI, 5G and beyond, to critical minerals, space, and blockchain. Our trade potential is being more aggressively explored bilaterally through the Trade Policy Forum and in a larger group through additional supply chains. The importance of infrastructure is similarly being discussed in terms of high quality and market viable initiatives. The people-centric nature of our activities is affirmed in education, innovation, R&D, and mobility. When it comes to defense and security, the benefits of India being a major defense partner of the US are becoming evident. And our collective Quad commitment to maritime security is equally relevant. On many of the big challenges of the day, terrorism, pandemics, or climate change, our thinking is along parallel paths. We not only work together on global issues, but are dedicated to the well-being of the global commons. That provides the basis for coordinated action. What does all this mean for those in business? To begin with, it clearly signals a very positive enabling environment. When polities have strong convergences, their economic energies tend to find partners much more readily. Second, both India-US relations and the Quad speak of a newer and more collaborative era of our ties. We are seeing value in each other more clearly and with less constraints. 3, in an era where technology is increasingly connected with trust and supply chains with reliability, we are contemplating how best to take forward post-COVID economic recovery. So, as you deliberate on all these subjects and more, I also hope that you will take into account the transformation in India even amidst the pandemic, the nature of the public health response, the fiscal handling of the pandemic-induced challenges, the reforms in labor, education and agriculture, and the expansion of manufacturing are developments that surely merit your consideration. At the end of the day, any relationship is only as strong as its economic foundation. You are all charged with strengthening that even in the normal course. But as we seek to come out of the pandemic with a more purposeful agenda of cooperation, your understanding and sentiments acquire an even greater value. I'm sure you've had a successful summit. Thank you for your attention.